"You are too big for a wife," they said. She was unwanted until an Apache saw her power. At first, these things were praised when she was a child. Elders would smile and say she was helpful or hard-working. But as she grew older, the same traits slowly changed how people looked at her. In her village, there were quiet rules that everyone understood. A girl was expected to be soft, small, and gentle in appearance. Strength was admired in men, but in women it made people uncomfortable. When she entered her teenage years, whispers began. Women would compare her to other girls and shake their heads. Men would avoid speaking about her future. No one said anything directly at first, but she could feel it in their looks and pauses. When marriage talks started for girls her age, her name was rarely mentioned. Mothers would discuss matches for their daughters openly, laughing and dreaming about weddings. When the conversation turned to her, it would suddenly change direction. Sometimes someone would say, "She is a good worker," as if that explained everything. Other times someone would quietly say, "She is too big for a wife," and the room would fall silent. Those words followed her everywhere. They were not always spoken to her face, but she heard them often enough. At family gatherings, neighbors, even distant relatives would say things that sounded caring but felt heavy. "You will be useful in the fields. You are strong like a man. God has given you a different path." Each sentence pushed her further away from the life she had once imagined for herself. She tried to ignore it at first. She told herself that people talked too much, that time would change their minds. She focused on her work, helping her parents, supporting her younger siblings, and doing whatever was needed. She woke up before sunrise and slept after everyone else. Her hands grew rough, her back strong, and her face calm. From the outside, she looked confident and capable. Inside, she carried questions she never spoke aloud. She wondered what was wrong with her. She looked at her reflection in still water or polished metal, studying her face and body, searching for the flaw everyone else seemed to see so clearly. She did not think she was ugly. She knew she was not weak. Yet somehow, she was unwanted. This confusion slowly turned into quiet sadness. As the years passed, the distance between her and other women grew. Friends she grew up with began to marry. One by one, they left their family homes and started new lives. She attended their celebrations, smiling and offering help, hiding the small ache in her chest. People praised her kindness and reliability, but no one imagined her as a bride. Some women felt sorry for her. Others avoided the topic altogether. A few spoke harshly, saying it was better this way, that marriage would not suit someone like her. These words cut deeper than open insults. They suggested that she did not belong in the same world as everyone else. Her parents loved her, but even they struggled with what to say. Her mother would sometimes sigh quietly while folding clothes or preparing food. Her father spoke less about her future than he did about her brothers. They never treated her badly, but the silence itself felt like an answer. They did not know how to protect her from the judgment of the community. To cope, she became even more dependable. She worked harder, thinking that if she proved her worth, something might change. People relied on her strength, her honesty, and her calm nature. When there was heavy work to do, her name was called first. When something needed fixing or carrying, she was always there. Yet when it came to affection or dreams, she was left aside. Deep inside, she began to lower her expectations. She stopped imagining a life where someone chose her first. She told herself that not everyone was meant for love, that some people were meant only to serve and support. This belief did not come suddenly. It grew slowly, shaped by years of quiet rejection. There were moments when she felt anger, but she pushed it down. Anger would not change her situation, she thought. Instead, she became quiet and controlled, accepting what life seemed to offer. People mistook this calm for acceptance, not realizing how much it cost her. Even so, she never became bitter. She continued to treat others with respect. She helped young girls without judging them, even when they reminded her of what she was denied. She listened more than she spoke, observing the world around her with thoughtful eyes. Her strength was not only physical, it was emotional, though few recognized it. At night, when she was alone, doubts returned. She questioned whether her life would always remain this way. Would she always be seen only as hands for work and not a heart to love? These thoughts scared her, but she kept them hidden. In her community, showing such feelings would only invite more judgment. As time moved forward, opportunities in her village remained limited. Life followed the same pattern year after year, but change was quietly approaching, though she did not know it yet. A new work project was announced, one that would bring people from different regions together. It promised hard labor and long days, the kind of work she was already used to. When her name was suggested, no one objected. Of course she could handle it, they said. Of course she was suitable. She accepted without hesitation, seeing it as just another responsibility. She did not expect it to change anything. She only saw it as work, nothing more. What she did not realize was that this step would take her beyond the narrow world that had defined her for so long. She was about to meet people who did not know her past or the labels placed on her, people who would look at her with fresh eyes. At this point in her life, she did not believe such a thing was possible. For now, she remained the woman everyone depended on but no one chose, strong, capable, and unseen. Carrying years of quiet endurance, unaware that the very qualities used to reject her would soon become the reason someone finally saw her true worth. When she left her village to join the new work project, she did not feel excitement. She felt only a quiet sense of duty. Packing her small bag, she moved carefully, as if not to disturb the familiar sadness she had learned to live with. Her mother helped her fold clothes, her hands slow and thoughtful. They did not talk much. Both of them understood that this journey was not about hope or dreams. It was simply work, and work was something she knew well. The project site was far from home. The land looked different, the air felt unfamiliar, and the people came from many places. Some spoke differently, dressed differently, and carried themselves in ways she had never seen before. At first, she kept to herself. She listened more than she spoke and watched how others moved and worked. Being among strangers felt safer in a strange way. No one here knew her story. No one had already decided what she was worth. The work was hard. Long days under the sun, lifting, building, clearing, and carrying. Many people struggled, but she did not. Her body was used to effort. She moved steadily, conserving energy, helping where needed without drawing attention to herself. Supervisors noticed her reliability. When a task needed strength and patience, they called her. Not because they admired her, but because they trusted her to finish the job. At first, this felt familiar. Once again, she was valued for what she could do, not for who she was. She told herself not to expect anything different. Still, something inside her felt lighter. Being away from her village meant fewer judging eyes, fewer silent labels. For the first time in years, she could simply exist. She shared simple living spaces with other workers. At night, they talked about their homes, their families, their plans. She listened, sometimes answering when asked but never sharing too much. When others spoke about love or marriage, she stayed quiet. Those topics felt distant, like stories from another life. One evening, a small group sat together after a long day. Someone joked about how tired everyone was. Laughter followed. For a moment she laughed too, surprised by the sound of her own voice. It had been a long time since laughter came so easily. No one looked at her strangely. No one stopped talking. It was a small thing, but it stayed with her. Days turned into weeks. Slowly, she began to notice differences in how people treated one another here. Strength was not mocked. Hard work was respected, no matter who did it. Women and men worked side by side. Some women were small, some tall, some quiet, some bold. No one seemed bothered by these differences. This confused her at first. She had grown up believing there was only one way to be accepted. Still, she kept her guard up. Years of quiet rejection had taught her not to hope too quickly. She focused on routine. Wake up, work, eat, rest, repeat. But even within this routine, change was happening. There were moments when someone would thank her directly, looking her in the eyes. Not with pity, not with surprise, but with respect. These moments made her uncomfortable. She did not know how to receive such recognition. Part of her wondered if it was real or just temporary kindness. One afternoon, a task required a group to move heavy materials across rough ground. Some people hesitated, unsure how to manage it safely. She stepped forward calmly, showing a better way to balance the weight and move together. Others followed her lead. The task was completed smoothly. Afterward, a few people nodded at her with appreciation. One said, "That was smart thinking." The words echoed in her mind long after the day ended. No one had ever called her thinking smart before. They usually spoke only of her strength as if that was all she had. That night she lay awake, staring at the ceiling. She felt unsettled, not because something bad had happened, but because something good had. It challenged the beliefs she had carried for so long. She wondered if she had been wrong about herself, or if this place was simply different. As the project continued, she began to interact more. She shared small stories, asked questions, and listened closely. She learned that people came from different cultures, each with their own ways of seeing the world. Some spoke about traditions where women were respected for endurance and wisdom. Hearing this felt strange, almost unreal. She also noticed one man among the workers who seemed different from the rest. He was not loud or attention-seeking. He worked with focus and calm, speaking only when necessary. He observed people quietly, offering help without making a show of it. When he spoke, others listened. She did not think much of him at first. She was used to men either ignoring her or treating her like a tool, but this man did neither. He greeted her the same way he greeted everyone else, with steady respect. When they worked near each other, he did not rush or compete. He matched the pace of the group. Once during a break, he asked her a simple question about her hometown. His tone was neutral, not curious in a judging way, just interested. She answered briefly, expecting the conversation to end. But he listened carefully, nodding, not interrupting. When she finished, he thanked her for sharing. The conversation ended naturally, without awkwardness. That small interaction stayed with her. It did not feel heavy or confusing. It felt normal. She realized how rare that feeling was for her. Still, she reminded herself not to read too much into it. One respectful conversation did not erase years of experience. She kept her focus on work and routine. Meanwhile, the project demanded more cooperation. Teams were mixed and changed often. She found herself working with new people, learning different methods. Sometimes others asked for her opinion. At first she hesitated, worried about overstepping. But when she did speak, people listened. This was new. In her village, her voice had never carried much weight. Here it did. Slowly, her posture changed. She stood a little straighter. Her steps felt lighter. She did not smile more, but her eyes held less tension. She was still cautious, but something inside her was shifting. There were moments when old thoughts returned. When she caught her reflection in a window or metal surface, she still judged herself harshly. Years of words did not disappear easily. But now, there were new experiences to challenge those thoughts. New memories that did not fit the old story. She began to understand that her life back home had shown her only one narrow view of worth. Here, she was seeing another way. A way where strength was not something to hide, where usefulness did not cancel out humanity. As the project moved closer to completion, she felt a quiet fear. What would happen when it ended? Would she return to the same place, the same labels, the same silence? Or had something truly changed within her? She did not have answers yet, but for the first time she allowed herself to wonder. Not dream wildly, not hope loudly, but wonder quietly. That alone felt like progress. Unknowingly, she was standing at the edge of a deeper change. She had not yet realized that someone had truly seen her, not just her strength, but her presence, her discipline, and her inner balance. That realization was still ahead, waiting for the right moment to rise to the surface. As the work project moved into its later stage, the days began to feel different for her. The routine stayed the same, but her inner world was slowly changing. She no longer felt like she was only passing time. Each morning when she woke up, there was a quiet alertness in her mind, as if something important might happen, even if she did not know what it was. She noticed that the calm man was often placed in the same work groups as her. At first, she thought it was chance. The teams changed frequently, but somehow they crossed paths again and again. They worked side by side without much talk, yet there was an ease in the silence. It was not heavy or awkward. It felt balanced. He never tried to show off his strength or skill. When a task was difficult, he approached it with patience. He paid attention to details others ignored. She began to notice how he respected the land, the tools, and the people around him. He did not rush. He did not complain. This reminded her of herself, though she had never thought of her own ways as something worth noticing. One afternoon, a problem came up that delayed the work. Materials were placed incorrectly and frustration spread among the workers. Voices grew louder. Some blamed others. She stood back, watching, unsure whether to speak. In her past, stepping forward had often brought unwanted attention. Before she could decide, the calm man spoke. His voice was steady, not loud. He pointed out the issue clearly and suggested a simple solution. Then, without making it about himself, he looked at her and asked if she agreed. The question surprised her. No one had ever asked her opinion in front of others like that. She hesitated for a moment, then nodded and added a small suggestion of her own. The group listened. They followed the plan. The problem was solved. Afterward, as they returned to work, she felt her hands shaking slightly. Not from fear, but from something else she could not name. Being asked, being trusted, being heard, it was unfamiliar. She caught the calm man glancing at her, not staring, just acknowledging. He gave a brief nod as if to say her contribution mattered. That moment stayed with her all day. Later, during a break, they sat a short distance apart from the others. The air was quiet. Birds moved across the open sky. Without looking directly at her, he spoke about how cooperation made hard work easier. His words were simple but thoughtful. She responded carefully, choosing her words as she always did. As they talked, she noticed something important. He did not guide the conversation. He did not dominate it. He allowed pauses. He listened fully. When she spoke, he did not rush to answer. He considered her words. This made her feel something she had not felt in a long time, calm curiosity instead of guarded caution. Over the next few days, their conversations grew slightly longer. They spoke about work, about weather, about places they had seen. He shared small details about his background, mentioning his Apache roots with quiet pride. He spoke of traditions that valued balance, respect, and inner strength. He did not speak as if teaching or correcting her. He simply shared. When she listened, something inside her shifted. In his words, she heard ideas that felt new but also deeply right. Strength was not only about the body. It was about steadiness, patience, and knowing one's place without shrinking or pushing too hard. In his culture, he explained, women who were strong were often trusted, not questioned. She did not know what to say to that. A part of her wanted to dismiss it, to tell herself it was just talk. But another part felt seen in a way that words could not fully explain. She began to notice how he looked at her, not with interest that made her uncomfortable, not with judgment, but with awareness. He noticed when she was tired. He noticed when she carried more than others. Once, without saying anything, he quietly shifted some weight from her load to his. He did not make a comment or wait for thanks. He simply did it. That small action affected her deeply. She had always been the one carrying extra silently. No one had ever stepped in like that before. At night, she found herself thinking about these moments. She reminded herself not to imagine too much. She had lived too long being unseen to suddenly believe in something different. Yet her thoughts returned to the way he spoke, the way he listened, the way he treated her as if she had always had value. She began to see herself differently through these interactions. When she moved, she felt more grounded. When she spoke, she trusted her voice a little more. The words too big and unwanted did not disappear, but they grew quieter. Others started to notice changes as well. Some workers commented on how well she handled leadership tasks. Some asked her for advice. She was no longer just the one who worked hardest. She was the one people trusted. This shift felt slow but real. One evening, as the sun lowered and painted the land in soft colors, she and the calm man found themselves walking back from the worksite together. The path was quiet. The day had been long. He spoke then about something more personal. He said that he had learned over time to recognize strength that did not demand attention. He said the world often misunderstood such strength, especially in women. His words were not dramatic. They were thoughtful and measured. She felt her throat tighten. She did not know how to respond. Instead, she told him in simple terms about her village, about how people saw her, about how she had learned not to expect much. She did not share everything, but she shared enough. He listened without interruption. When she finished, there was a long pause. Then he said something that stayed with her forever. He said that sometimes when people do not understand something, they try to reduce it to make themselves comfortable. But that does not change the truth of what that thing is. He did not say she was wrong. He did not say others were cruel. He simply acknowledged her experience and placed it in a larger view. That night, she cried quietly for the first time in many years, not out of pain alone, but out of release. Something she had been holding inside began to loosen. From that point on, her connection with him did not become dramatic or rushed. It remained steady. They continued to work, talk, and share silence. But there was a growing understanding between them, a recognition. She realized that he did not see her as someone to be saved or changed. He saw her as someone already whole. This realization was powerful. It did not make her dependent on him. Instead, it strengthened her sense of self. She began to think about her future differently. Not in terms of what she lacked, but in terms of what she carried. As the project neared its end, she felt both gratitude and uncertainty. Something meaningful had happened, but she did not know where it would lead. What she did know was this. For the first time in her life, someone had looked at her and seen power, not as a problem, but as a gift. And because of that, she was beginning to see it too. As the final days of the work project approached, she felt a quiet pressure inside her chest. It was not fear exactly, but awareness. She knew that something important had changed, and she also knew that change could not be undone. The land around her looked the same, the work followed the same rhythm, but she was no longer the same woman who had arrived weeks earlier. She noticed how naturally she now moved among people. She spoke when needed and stayed silent when it felt right, not because she was afraid, but because she trusted her judgment. Others responded to her with ease. They greeted her warmly, asked for her thoughts, and included her without hesitation. This still surprised her at times, but she no longer questioned it as much as she once had. The calm man remained a steady presence. Nothing about him suddenly changed. He did not make promises or speak in dramatic ways. He continued to treat her with the same respect he always had. Yet there was a shared understanding between them now, something unspoken but clear. They did not need constant words to recognize it. One evening, near the end of the project, the workers gathered together for a simple closing meal. There was food, quiet laughter, and stories shared about the weeks they had spent together. She sat among them, listening, occasionally smiling. At one point, she realized something that made her pause. She felt included, not as an exception, not as a helper standing on the edge, but as part of the group. This feeling was new and deeply grounding. Later that night, she walked alone for a short while, letting the cool air settle her thoughts. She reflected on her past, on the years she had spent believing she was somehow misplaced in the world. She remembered the words spoken about her, the looks that dismissed her before she even spoke. Those memories still existed, but they no longer controlled her. For the first time, she understood something clearly. The rejection she had faced was not proof of her weakness. It was proof of how narrow other people's understanding had been. The next day, as people began to prepare for departure, emotions quietly surfaced. Some workers exchanged contact details, others made plans to meet again. She did not rush to do either. She took her time, feeling no pressure. She knew that whatever happened next, she would meet it differently than before. The calm man approached her while she was packing her things. He did not interrupt her work. He simply stood nearby, waiting until she noticed him. When she did, he smiled gently and asked how she felt about returning home. She thought carefully before answering. She said that she felt stronger than when she had arrived, but also uncertain. Home had not changed, but she had. She did not know how that difference would fit. He listened, then said something simple and steady. He said that wherever she went, the strength she carried would go with her, and that once someone sees their own value, it cannot be taken away by others. He did not tell her what to do. He did not suggest a future. He respected her choice, whatever it might be. That respect meant more to her than any promise. When the project officially ended, they parted without dramatic goodbyes. There was a shared look, a quiet understanding that this connection was not dependent on constant closeness. They both knew where to find each other if the time was right. She returned to her village days later. The familiar sights welcomed her back, the same roads, the same homes, the same people. At first, nothing seemed different, but as she walked through the village, she noticed something important. The heaviness she used to feel there was gone. People greeted her as they always had, some warmly, some politely. A few made comments about how hard she must have worked. She nodded and smiled. Inside, she felt steady. The old words did not pierce her the way they once did. Her mother noticed the change first. She watched her daughter move, speak, and rest with a new calm. One evening, she asked quietly if the work had been good for her. She answered honestly. She said it had shown her something about herself that she had never been allowed to see before. Life at home continued. She returned to daily responsibilities, helping her family, working alongside others. But now she no longer overextended herself to prove worth. She chose when to help and when to rest. This balance surprised people. Some noticed, some did not. But it no longer mattered in the same way. Over time, people began to respond differently to her. Not because they had suddenly changed their beliefs, but because she had changed how she carried herself. Confidence without loudness, strength without apology, it shifted how others interacted with her. There were moments when old judgments surfaced. A familiar comment, a familiar look. But now she met them with calm eyes. She did not argue. She did not shrink. She simply existed fully as herself. That alone was powerful. Months passed. One day she received a message through shared contacts from the project. It was from the calm man. The words were simple. He said he hoped she was well. He shared that he was continuing his work and staying connected to his community. He said he respected her path and would be glad to speak again if she wished. She read the message slowly, feeling no rush. She realized something important in that moment. Whether or not their paths crossed again, what mattered most had already happened. She had been seen, and through that, she had learned to see herself. She replied honestly, sharing that she was finding her footing in her own way. They exchanged messages occasionally after that, never demanding more than the moment offered. As time went on, opportunities opened in small but meaningful ways. People sought her input on decisions. Younger girls watched her and felt encouraged. She became a quiet example of what strength could look like without force or bitterness. She no longer measured her life by whether she was chosen. She measured it by whether she was true to herself. In moments of reflection, she thought back to the words once spoken about her, that she was too big, too different, too much. Now, she understood the truth hidden beneath those words. She had always been powerful. The world around her simply had not known how to hold that power. Her story did not end with a dramatic transformation or loud victory. It ended with something far more lasting: self-recognition, peace, the freedom to stand fully in who she was. And in that quiet strength, she finally belonged, not because someone allowed her to, but because she claimed it for herself.